I love disc golf, and I want to talk to you guys today about things that I wish I knew 10 years ago when I started playing disc golf. Um, I'm going to save the best for last, so if you wait till the end of the video, I think my last point is the most important as far as playing well in disc golf. So thank you guys for being here. I enjoy talking with you about disc golf, and again, I'm 41 years old. I'm an advanced amateur player. I play in MA1 division, and I've been playing for about 12 years. I say I wish I would have known these 10 years ago. Basically, I just wish I would have known them when I started playing. And I'll go ahead and start. The first thing is number one, mobility and flexibility is very important. As we can see in the young players, they're getting coming up in the pro ranks. You just see these young guys are really they're really flexible. They can really get a good long reach back. Like Eagle McMahon, before he had his injury, his forehand was incredible. You would see in slow motion his elbow kind of getting out in front of his wrist. And I don't recommend trying to do that, but he just did it naturally because he had the elbow and shoulder mobility. And it's something that I think that as disc golfers we ignore and that's okay too, because we're just getting out there to have fun usually in the beginning. But as you're getting competitive, I wish I would have known how important flexibility and mobility is. I've never ever in my whole life prioritized flexibility and mobility. I just kind of was not a flexible person. I just had other strengths or whatever. So just recently, in the last 3 months, I've been doing some morning stretches, doing some YouTube yoga, which kind of teaches you some stretches, and which is actually really relaxing and a nice way to start the morning. Doing these stretches and drinking some coffee and just waking up the body and the mind. It's really great just for that. But adding that mobility and flexibility is also going to keep the injuries away. I have personally had a couple injuries. I partially tore a tendon in my knee playing disc golf. I've had rotator cuff issues from throwing thumbers and forehands. And not listening to my body. But that's the next one. Number two is listen to your body, listen to your aches and pains. I think especially when you're a little younger than I am, even when I started 30, I could have these aches and pains. I'd be doing thumbers, and sometimes I would even push it, and I'd almost in a weird way be proud of. I could throw 20 thumbers in a round, and at the end my kind of right top of my forearm was getting really tight and sore, and I'd feel it in my shoulder sometimes, and in a weird way, I kind of had a little bit of arrogance about, I'm like, oh, I can have that, and then it's fine. My body's strong enough to deal with it. So as I'm older now, I realize that was silly, and I was just being kind of, I don't know, immature really, because now that I'm a little bit smarter in it, I realize that when you're having those aches and pains, you need to listen to them immediately. If something hurts, if it hurts, you're doing it wrong. There's a difference between hurt and a little bit of muscle fatigue or whatnot. Muscle fatigue is probably fine. You guys can decide for yourself what is healthy, kind of strain and what isn't. But if you feel an actual pain, in your shoulder, you feel an acute pain when you forehand, or say thumber, or even sometimes forehand, or say it's in your elbow, you need to listen to that. And I'd say immediately don't do it again, and then start researching into it, start looking into it. I don't know, watch YouTube videos about it, and try to find what you're doing wrong. Because if it hurts, then it's probably a form issue. It could be a mobility or flexibility issue. But the point is, you need to tailor your game to your own body, and what might work for someone else may not work for you because you don't have the same body as them. So you just need to listen to your pain and try to work around it instead of working through it. Because personally, I have pushed through that, and then I eventually I had the tendon tear, partial tear, and then the rotator cuff issue, which was shoulder impingement. And both of those, I had kind of felt that pain several times before. I mean, the one in my knee before I partially tore it, I had felt that during rounds for like most of a year, and I kind of was like, I need to stretch that whenever I felt it. I didn't take it seriously enough. And your body's got a way of, if you don't take something serious, it will make you take it seriously once you injure it. So I'm just saying, listen to your aches and pains from the start. This game is not meant to hurt your body. If it does, you're doing something wrong, at least for your body, and you need to figure it out so that you don't cause an injury and go backwards. The third thing is that throwing a disc is an athletic movement. When we just get started, I know we're just having fun, but as you get a little bit more competitive, that's when you should stop trying to throw lazy. Stop trying to be lazy when you throw. I mean this in a way that it didn't even occur to me, and I think it doesn't occur to most people, that if you're out there and you're throwing your drive, you're doing your X step, but you're all flat-footed, you can tell the difference. If you're all flat-footed through that, you know what's not an athletic movement. So, and I have to credit Slingshot Disc Golf, which I have a friend that will kind of has joked with me that I look just like the guy with the hat and everything. And when I told him about the channel, that I was actually just plugging into my channel, but I'm not. But I will say, Slingshot Disc Golf, he does push this point that it's an athletic movement, just like other sports, like basketball, like anything else. You need to be athletic in your throw, and so he really pushes being on the balls of your feet. So when you're doing your drive, being on the balls of your feet throughout is very important, because it actually turns that into an athletic movement from being flat-footed. This takes a while to get used to. It's something just like anything in your form. You have to plug in and then do it over and over and over and over for months, and then eventually it kind of sticks with you. But that's very important, and I'd say it's important for all kinds of throws in disc golf. And then the other part of this is that it's an athletic movement. So if you want to be competitive in disc golf, start trying to train athletically. It's so simple, and it makes so much sense if you're actually trying to be competitive in your play. You don't have to be competing for top whatever, but you're trying to win when you could play in tournaments or play at your league or get better. So what I, it's kind of silly because we all think, we're just trying to make our form better, get better. Well, your body as a unit, if you make it stronger, it's going to have more force, which is what propels the disc. You're going to be able to make more, have more velocity, propel the disc farther. And so that athleticism comes from the ground up. So I say, no matter what you do in disc golf, and no matter what level you're at, if you're 60 years old or 25 years old, whatever, building your strength is only going to be a good thing. And build it in the largest muscle groups are most important: your legs, your back, your core. Of course, your chest and your shoulders, your arms do matter, but if you focus on legs, core, and back, kind of with some of those movements that do that, squats, deadlifts, and I'm not recommending whatever for anybody, but you got to know yourself. But those main things are important, because if you're out there kind of doing the gym bro thing and just like doing curls or just doing bench press, you're not going to see much translate to your disc golf game. But if you are doing, you're doing rows, you're doing pull-ups, you're doing deadlifts, you're going to be building out. Deadlifts going to be building your whole posterior chain, it's called, which is the whole back of your body, from your calves up through your hamstrings and your glutes and your back and through your traps and your lats, which is you're pulling. So all those things are going to work together. So, it's an athletic movement. So if you care about it, start training athletically. Start slow if you need to, whatever. But just that's one thing that can help your disc golf. And the last thing, I told you guys I was going to save the best for last, and that is that disc golf is a game of focus. And work on that from the start, alongside with your form. So I have learned after 5 years of competing in tournaments, after 7 years before that of just casually playing every once in a while, and now I can tell, especially at the advanced level, and I'd say at the higher intermediate level, that focus is like the most important, other than just having a general skill to be able to throw at least 300 feet or whatever, and then build on that, and then making some putts. Focus, other than those, are, so once you kind of got your form good enough that you know how to throw a disc without it just dumping out 150 feet away, once you're past that, start thinking about focus. And what I mean by that is you really have to train this muscle and skill. It might come easier to some people, but I think everybody has to train at some point. And I have to train a lot because it didn't come easily to me. The skill of continually keeping your focus and concentration on the target from before your throw through the end of your throw. Unbroken. So it's an unbroken train of focus, train of concentration. I sometimes say it as like your mind's eye, that in your mind's eye, especially on like driving or backhand, you have to look away from the target to get a good throw, a committed throw. You got to keep that target wherever it is you're throwing at, whether it's the basket, whether it's the gap, whether it's some tree in the distance so that you can hyzer in. You've got to keep that in your mind's eye from the beginning of your throw, your steps, and through finishing, because you've got to look away for a second. So if you do that, keep that in your mind's eye, you throw towards it, that is where you're consistently going to go to it. And it's a really, really big difference, really big deal. Now that I know this, and if there are times where I am throwing and then I think another thought while I'm doing my walk up, it's usually like, this is going to be a bad throw. That's usually the thought. That breaks that concentration and my focus on the target, and it pretty much always is a bad throw. That's when I shank it or turn it over, whatever, is because I have broken that focus. So if I keep the focus from the beginning to the end in my mind's eye on the drives, then that is a huge, huge difference. And for me, it's almost like I'm trying to get through an entire round with every single throw totally concentrated. And it's a continual training of the focus. And what I'm saying is start that early. So if I had been doing that 10 years ago, how much better would I be at that than I am right now? And so I think, most beginners probably don't think about that or start that. And then that it does also really pertain to putting. When you're putting, you need to choose your aim point. And what I say is stay focused from the point where you found it, where you're at, you're back, and you're finished. And stay on that aim point until the disc hits that chain. And then stop. If you can do that, your putting is going to get so much better. That is the biggest difference. And there's so many times when you're putting and you're like, I'm nervous, and then you almost blank out and you putt at it. Next thing you know, you hit off the side and you're like, I kind of blacked out there for about half a second. So that's what happens. And I think there's something in us when it comes to nerves that kind of do that. It shuts us off for a second. So you build that focus. That's as important after you've got general form down. That's the most important thing. That's everything I got for you guys. 4 points. And thanks for being here. I hope you get out and enjoy the disc golf this week. And remember, memento mori.